All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to tackle three of the most powerful, most debated, and, let's be honest, most misunderstood ideas in all of political history. For any student of political science, getting these terms straight isn't just helpful, it's absolutely essential. You've probably heard this line before. It's the famous opening to the Communist Manifesto. And, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, they weren't just being dramatic. This line perfectly captures the feeling of the time, this sense that a huge, revolutionary change was coming, born from a world that was being completely turned upside down. It was both a warning and a promise. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of world could possibly inspire such radical, society-shattering ideas? Well, to really get it, we need to picture what life was actually like back in the 19th century. I mean, just look at this. This wasn't just a tough time. It was a system of brutal, grinding exploitation. You had the factory owners, what Marx called the bourgeoisie, getting incredibly rich, while the working class, the proletariat, were living in poverty. For Marx, this wasn't just a side effect. It was the central conflict of the modern age. Okay, so let's untangle these key terms. You hear them used interchangeably all the time, but they're not the same thing. In fact, as we're about to see, they represent a pretty clear hierarchy of ideas, and getting that order right is crucial. So, let's start with socialism. Think of socialism as the big, wide umbrella. It covers a whole family of ideas, but the core principle is always this. The major resources, the factories, the farms, the means of production, should be owned by the community as a whole. Why? To make sure wealth is distributed more fairly. Now, under that big umbrella of socialism, you get Marxism. And what's really fascinating here is the shift from a general goal to a specific method. Marx wasn't just saying, hey, inequality is bad. He believed he had developed a scientific theory. A theory that explained exactly how history works through class struggle, and that predicted the inevitable overthrow of capitalism. And this is the final destination, the theoretical endgame of Marxism. After the revolution, Marx predicted that the state itself would eventually just wither away. There'd be no classes, no money, no government as we know it, just a completely equal society where everything is shared. It's the utopian vision at the end of the road. This little analogy really helps clear things up. Under socialism, it's like a neighborhood potluck. Everyone contributes to make sure nobody goes hungry, but you still own your own house and your own kitchen. Communism, in its final, pure form, that's where nobody owns a private house. The entire neighborhood is one big home, and the kitchen and all the food are shared by everyone, completely. Okay, so that's the theory. But theory is one thing, right? How did these ideas jump from the pages of a book and explode onto the world stage? Let's take a look at how Marx's blueprint was taken up, adapted, and put into revolutionary practice. The 20th century was, in many ways, defined by these events. From the industrial heartlands of Europe to the vast farmlands of Asia, these ideas inspired revolutions that didn't just change governments. They redrew the entire map of the world and shaped the lives of billions. Now here's the thing. Marx was writing about industrial societies like England and Germany. So what happens when you try to apply his ideas to a massive feudal empire like Russia or a largely agrarian country like China? Well, you get adaptations. Lenin argued you needed a professional vanguard party to kickstart the revolution. Stalin focused inward on building a powerful, brutal state. And Mao, he flipped the script entirely, shifting the focus from city workers to rural peasants. So let's zoom in and bring this whole story home. How on earth did these ideas, born in 19th century Europe, find such fertile ground right here in Nepal? And how did they lead to one of the most radical political transformations in the country's entire history? Nepal is famously positioned between two giants, India and China, and its journey has always been unique. But the real reason these revolutionary ideas took hold wasn't about its neighbors. It was about what was happening inside the country. The internal conditions were just ripe for change. I mean, it was a perfect storm. You had a feudal system, massive inequality, a repressive government, and widespread poverty. For huge numbers of people facing that reality, the Marxist promise of equality and liberation wasn't just an abstract political theory. It felt like a lifeline. It gave them a way to understand their suffering and a path to fight back. And this wasn't just a vague influence. The strategy used in the People's War, or Janayuddha, was lifted directly from Mao's playbook. It was a peasant-led rural guerrilla war designed to encircle the cities and challenge the state. And it worked. ultimately leading to the end of Nepal's monarchy and the birth of the republic we know today. So, where does that leave us today? Let's be honest. These words get thrown around all the time in modern politics, and often incorrectly. So what are the absolutely critical distinctions that every student of political science needs to have locked down?
When you put them side by side like this, the practical differences become massive. Socialism is often seen as a goal you can work towards gradually through democratic elections. But the path to communism, at least historically, has always involved a sudden, violent revolution led by a single party. That's a fundamental split in both the how and the what.
Okay, this is a big one. This question comes up constantly, and it's probably one of the biggest points of confusion in political debates today. So let's clear it up. The short answer is no, and here's the crucial difference. Countries like Sweden and Norway are social democracies. They don't get rid of capitalism, they regulate it. They have free markets and private property, but they also have very high taxes to pay for huge social safety nets, things like universal health care and education. They're trying to reform capitalism, not replace it. That is the key.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground, so let's boil this all down. If you're going to remember just 3 things from this entire discussion for your studies, please make it these 3.
First, remember the hierarchy. Socialism is the broad goal, Marxism is one specific theory on how to get there, and communism is the theoretical utopia at the end. Second, the gap between theory and practice is massive. The goal was a stateless utopia. The reality has always been a powerful authoritarian state. And third, context is everything. These ideas look very different depending on whether you're in industrial London or rural Nepal.
And that really brings us back to today, doesn't it? The problems that Marx was so focused on, exploitation, deep inequality, the power of concentrated wealth, they haven't gone away. So if the revolutionary solution of the 20th century led to failure, the big question for all of us is what's the right solution for the 21st? That's the debate that continues to shape our world.